Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Hilliard MacBeth, author of the second edition of the book When the Bubble Burst, Surviving the Canadian Real Estate Crash. He's also a portfolio manager and financial advisor in Edmonton. His website, MacBethMcLeodPartners.com. Welcome back to the show, Hilliard.
Nice to be with you again.
Hilliard, I saw on Bloomberg Canadian credit card debt is at a 6-year low. Is that because people spent their COVID relief money to pay off their debts, or are we just being more responsible with our credit cards?
You know, I think it's a combination, but the total debt in the household sector has gone way up. So it's encouraging to see the credit card debt's gone down, but I think people have gotten a little smarter and they're covering the 19% interest on credit cards with 1 or 2% interest on mortgages. So the mortgage debt is up quite substantially as a percentage of GDP, and the total debt is up quite substantially as a percentage of GDP. It's actually quite shocking because the federal government went deeply into debt. $350 billion last year, and they're forecasting $150 billion this year. And a lot of that was transfers to the private sector, to households. So the fact that their debt actually went up when it really should have gone down is a bit of a shock. But certainly people are getting a little smarter about not paying that 19% interest.
Now, of course, they want you to use your credit card to buy consumer goods to keep the economy going. What if people aren't just using their credit cards and they aren't buying things? Because I saw consumer spending in the U.S. was up, but it was explained to me that's because consumer goods are more expensive. You're not buying more, you're getting less, but you're paying more for it. Is that a factor we have to look at?
Yeah, and like this whole pent-up demand argument is quite interesting because the banks reported a couple of weeks ago, I think we talked about it at the time, and they had a big increase in their their deposits. So they took that as a sign that people had this massive savings, and they even in their press releases and their interviews, they've said, we've got this pent-up demand that's going to be unleashed and once people get back. But, the reality is with the debts going up, we see that information out now, it doesn't quite add up. So I think the old thing before this is, all of this is brand new. It's never happened before, at least not in 50 years. And probably never before has this happened. And I think the old rules of thumb may not apply, but it used to be that if people had borrowing capacity or savings, and they were confident they were going to have a job in the future, so they have a job today, and they also feel pretty confident they're going to have a job in the future, then they'll spend, right? So that was the old rule. Today, I think the rule is just if the bank or the credit card company will approve their increasing credit, they'll spend just based on that. So it does look like there's a good chance that they might increase their spending because having paid down all that credit card, there's no history, there's no record of a long-term decline in credit card debt. It's usually just temporary. So they got scared, they had the COVID, and then now if it goes back, if it opens up again, those credit cards will get warmed up again and they'll get red hot, and the restaurants and the travel companies and everybody will benefit from that. But the worry is, I think that inflation might come back. Already we're seeing signs of quite a few shortages in some area, and people have this cash to spend. And so if it's just inflation that's causing an increase in consumer spending, as you say, that's not good for employment or any of that other stuff. That's the scary thing. Now that hasn't happened since the late 70s. So there's a few people like me around that remember what that was like, but almost nobody does. So the obviously the Bank of Canada is not worried at all about it because they're saying, well, if you've got room to borrow, and this is a great time to borrow, go out and borrow. So they're encouraging people to go deeper into debt, which, has bothered me quite a bit since I wrote the first edition of the book. But, so I don't know what would be the thing. If inflation comes back, the last number in Canada was 3.4% or something, and the equivalent number in the US was 4.2%. Usually interest rates would be above that. They'd be 1 or 2 percentage points above that inflation rate. And that's because people want to get paid a premium to inflation. And if that were to happen, so that would imply 4 to 5% interest rates on mortgages and much higher on other types of loans. That would probably be what would cause people to stop spending. But if that doesn't happen, they'll probably carry on spending.
Could one of the reasons why we saw a big bump in real estate prices is the fact that they weren't foreclosing mortgages over the COVID crisis?
Oh, absolutely. And also they had the 6-month deferral on the mortgages and the deferral on their rent, and they actually found themselves with some money in the bank account, and they could then lever that with the money they got from the government and go to the borrower, and maybe not the Canadian banks. They were maybe still a little cautious, but there's other borrowers now. There's many borrowers out there now, or lenders, I should say. There's many lenders out there, and they're quite aggressive because they've all become convinced that house prices can never go down. And so they don't mind, giving somebody a 95% loan and 5% down payment, because even if that person falters on their payments, the lender can always seize the house, and by then it'll be worth 10% more, and they can get all their money back. So that's the thinking. I don't think that's right, but so far it's been right though. So that's why there's a tremendous amount of money out there. Plus, the banks have got a big push on to get the parents or the grandparents to co-sign the mortgages. So once they have that co-signer on the mortgage, they can give those young couples a home that they can't really afford and debts that they can't really afford without any trouble, because now they've got a whole bunch of money backing that loan.
Well, a friend of mine's parents did the down payment on his condo, saying, well, you were going to inherit the money anyway, and the prices at the time were slightly depressed, so they thought you'll never be able to buy one for as cheap as this. So here you go. Is that a common practice?
I think it's so common, and that's the reason I wrote the book. The first edition was when my clients started asking for withdrawals from as I say in the introduction. I noticed this trend, and it was new, and it was quite a while ago. It was probably 10 years ago now. They were asking for money out of their savings accounts. They might have been what they thought was pretty comfortable, $1 or $2 million for their savings, and they needed $100,000 to help a down payment for offspring to get a house. And I tried to talk them out of it, but without any success. I stopped trying because once they get to that point, they're ready to go. And it's based on that whole, the three things are, house prices always go up. All mortgage debt is good. Doesn't matter how big it is. You can't go wrong with a mortgage debt. And the third thing everybody believes is there'll never be a financial crisis in Canada. So the combination of those three things, allows people to get pretty aggressive on housing. And, I don't know how it ends, but I do know that all bubbles in the past have burst, and spectacular bubbles burst in a spectacular fashion. So we're in that. So unless Canada somehow has an exemption from that rule, we're going to be looking at something pretty spectacular here pretty soon.
It's the good thing about real estate bubbles is that they move in slow motion in comparison to, say, Bitcoin, which can take a massive drop in just one day.
I see that Bitcoin, just before we got on this call, I was looking at it, and it's dropped 50%. It's hit a peak of 64,000 in April, and it's now down to 32,000 today. It dropped just in the last week. I think it's dropped from 50,000 down to 32,000. And Ethereum has also come down by 50%. And Dogecoin, Elon Musk's favorite, has come down more than 50%. It hit a high of 74 cents, and now it's down to 32 cents or something like that. So I don't know if that's the end of the run in cryptocurrencies, but I did notice that the Colonial Pipeline hackers who demanded a ransom payment wanted to be paid in Bitcoin, and that was apparently pretty standard. But then last night we got an announcement that the government of the United States had recovered most of the money that was paid in the ransom. So somehow this must be traceable, the Bitcoin. Now that doesn't sound very good. You know, if you're going to be doing criminal activity, you don't want the government to be able to trace your payments. That's the whole thing about. Remember the movies? They always had the bills that are marked with some special identification. So maybe they'll go back to gold, which is more anonymous than Bitcoin, apparently.
Well, yeah, you can just give somebody a bag of gold. Nobody traces that. Bitcoin being a computer, look, if somebody invented a way to transfer something, then somebody can trace it. There's no such thing as an escape-proof prison. If a human designed it, a human can probably find a way around it.
Well, yeah, I mean, the advantage of Bitcoin, which was always the thing that, I've sort of avoided getting too involved in it, but the blockchain thing, it was always touted as a very big advance where you could trace every single transaction. You can't do that in most human activity. It's impossible to trace every single transaction. So blockchain was touted as this really good thing where everybody would know what to. Now, I think I thought you could hide anonymously behind an account or a wallet, as they call it. But maybe you can't be anonymous. I don't know. I think it's interesting. It's an interesting development. There's also some big push for Bitcoin mining because it's considered to be detrimental to the environment, and most of it's done in China, and it takes a tremendous amount of electricity because they're getting to the last 3 million coins or whatever. So it's getting harder and harder to solve the mathematical equations that you have to solve in order to earn a Bitcoin. And most of the power that they're using is coming from coal in the western part of China. So it's controversial. And Elon Musk, who had been somewhat positive on Bitcoin, he even announced that they were going to accept payments for new cars in Bitcoin, changed his tune a couple of weeks ago and pointed out the environmental impact of all this coal-fired electricity being used to mine Bitcoin, which is interesting because he would have known for sure. Everybody's known for a long time that that's how it's done. So something happened. I don't know what happened, but somebody maybe got to him and convinced him to reverse course. And that was around the time that Bitcoin peaked out at 64,000. Now it's down to 32,000.
We'll have more with Hilliard MacBeth right after this.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlin, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Hilliard MacBeth. Hilliard, should Canadians be worried about the Canadian government debt? Apparently, it doesn't look all that good if you measure it against what's happened in other G20 nations.
Yeah, so the BIS, the Bank for International Settlements, keeps track of all this, and they've been sending out these dire warnings, and you and I have talked about this more than once in the past. And up till COVID, the problem in Canada was always highlighted in the private sector. So the household debt was one of the highest in the world, maybe second or third highest in the world. And recently, corporate sector debt has surged ahead to be very, very exaggerated, elevated. But the new development is that government debt, because no other country ran such a big deficit, and most of the deficit was incurred by sending money to the households and to businesses. The number of programs Canada ran was ahead of anybody else, even ahead of the U.S., which is fairly generous. But the U.S. just had the one-time. They had 2 or 3 payments, but they were basically just one payment. But Canada chose to do continuous payments for many months, and so the household debt to GDP ratio rose the most in the G20, but also the total debt to GDP ratio rose to the highest in the top 10 countries in the world as well. We're not the highest in total. Japan actually has that distinction because Japan's got a tremendous amount of government debt. But we're the highest. We had the biggest increase over the COVID recession, and part of that was because the ratio from debt to GDP, and our GDP dropped more than most other countries as well. So it was partly the denominator dropped as much as the numerator went up. But the combination of all of that is that the total debt to GDP, which includes the government debt, increased by more than any of the world's 20 largest countries last year. And that's pretty serious because we were already leading the pack in 2 out of the 3 categories. So your question was more about government debt. Well, the government debt is the least worrisome of the 3 because, first of all, the government of Canada still has a AAA credit rating, although they're probably going to lose it fairly soon. But even if they lose it to AA plus or AA, it's still going to be one of the highest in the world. Right now, only among the larger countries, Germany is the only other one that has a AAA credit rating. So Canada's got a reputation, and that won't disappear right away. It's, it probably doesn't deserve it. It's got a better reputation than it deserves, but you don't lose it overnight. And, but the more scary part is the household, because, all you'd need for household, unemployment is still up. In Alberta, it's 8%. Overall, it's still pretty elevated in Canada. So, people can get in trouble pretty fast on their payments when they've got so much debt. So that's where you'd see the crisis start, would be in the private sector, in the corporation sector, or the household sector first. And then eventually the government would get into trouble because it would feel obligated to help those people. At least help the banks anyway, if nobody else, as we know from history.
Hilliard, because you've been a long-time Tesla owner, you always keep us up to date what's happening with that unique electric car. What's going on right now? A lot of people were promising and looking forward to their Plaid Plus super self-driving model, perhaps curling up in the back seat and having a nap on the way to work.
Yeah, so in September of last year, they had what's called the Battery Day, and they announced, Elon Musk and Tesla announced they've got this new battery called the 4680 cell, so 46 millimeters by 80 millimeters, which is a much bigger cell than the smaller cells. The lithium-ion batteries in the cars are very similar to the batteries you have in your smartphone. They just string a bunch of them together. So Tesla said, well, we're going to do these 4680 cells, and we're going to change the format a little bit, make it part of the structure of the car. And that's going to allow us to bring out this Plaid Plus, which was going to have a range of over 500 miles, so over 800-kilometer range. And it was also going to go 0 to 100 in 1.9 seconds. So I immediately put my deposit down, and it's a little bit faster than the car I have now, but the range is the big thing, because my range right now is about 470 kilometers. So to go to 800 and something would be a huge thing for going, on longer trips. So, but then last week they said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. So we don't know. So the cancellation of the Plaid Plus, which is the one that was going to have the 4680 cell, indicates that perhaps they're running into trouble. It was a newer technology, 9 months ago. Obviously, they were confident enough to announce it, but maybe they've run into some trouble. And it's also the battery pack that was going to go into the Cybertruck, that really weird-looking truck that they announced around the same time, about 9 months ago. And also the Tesla Semi, which was going to take over from diesel highway trucks. So there may be something going on. I don't know. But in any case, the official spin, the positive spin on it is the reason they're canceling Plaid Plus is because Plaid, which is going to be announced on Thursday of this week, is already good enough. So we don't need to do Plaid Plus. So the Plaid, the range on that is going to be about 630 kilometers, and the 0 to 100 speed is 1.9 seconds, which, I guess you could say that's pretty good. And it's going to be much cheaper than the Plaid Plus as well. So I guess those of us who ordered the Plaid Plus will probably switch their orders over to the Plaid and go with that. I mean, the car I currently have is now 4 years old, so it would be fine just to keep it. But the range is, so the one thing that's holding people back, I think, on the electric car is the range. And the range is fine for the city, like 470 kilometers is plenty. You only charge up once every 3 or 4 days, even pre-COVID. But if you want to go to, Edmonton to Vancouver, Edmonton to Calgary, Edmonton to Whitefish or something, that extra range would be very nice to have.
Hilliard, thank you so much for being on the show.
Nice to be on the show again.
My guest has been Hilliard MacBeth, author of the second edition of the book, When the Bubble Burst, Surviving the Canadian Real Estate Crash. His website, MacBethMcLeodPartners.com. If you have any questions for Hilliard or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@housestreet.com. Find us on Facebook. We're also on Twitter @HouseStreet. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HouseStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HouseStreet.com radio is a production of House Street Media Incorporated.